The month of November is going to be very interesting astrologically. We are going to have two planets begin their retrograde periods, and those two planets are Jupiter and Mercury. Not to mention Uranus is finally retrograding back into Taurus. I do want to make a clarification that in my October video, I said that Uranus was moving back into Taurus in October. That was wrong. That was incorrect. I misread what I was looking at essentially, so I sincerely apologize. November is when Uranus is finally moving back into Taurus. That is real. I triple, double, quadruple checked it. So I do apologize for the misinformation in my October video, but I promise this is the month Uranus moves back into Taurus, okay? Now, with this, we are going to be wrapping up the whole Uranus-Taurus cycle, which began in 2018, okay? So we're ending the Uranus-Taurus era, essentially. So think back to what you were doing in 2018, okay? Because you might be revisiting some of that this month. Now, before we get into it, my name is Sydney. I'm a professional astrologer. I've been studying astrology for over 15 years. I've been giving readings for over 10 years. On that note, I do have my website linked in the description for those of you who would like to book a reading with me. I offer a lot of different kinds, and regarding the context of this video, I do offer transit readings, okay? Now, do not forget to sign up for my email list. That way you don't miss out on exclusive promotions, discounts, and astrological tidbits. Okay, let's get into the video. So for the first portion of the video, I am going to be going over all of the significant dates this month. That way you know exactly what to expect and when certain transits are beginning, things like that. For the second part of the video, I'm going to be doing horoscopes for each rising sign and sun sign. Now, starting off strong, on November 4th, Mars is moving into Sagittarius. We are all going to be feeling this. Sagittarius is Jupiter ruled. Jupiter has a lot to do with travel, adventure, experience. Everybody's wanting progress, okay? Everyone is going to be feeling this desire for momentum, for movement, for adventure. There is this craving for more, more, more. Jupiter's association with expansion can definitely be interpreted, I don't want to say as like greediness, but you know, again, there's this desire for more and more and more. There's an insatiable attitude that comes when Mars is in Sagittarius, and that can inspire a lot of people to take risks. Jupiter and Sag energy, it's very much like the gambler of the zodiac. So people might be taking more risks during this time. People might feel a lot more inspired to travel, plan trips. Again, there's this desire for more. And a lot of the times there's a desire for newness. Everybody wants progress. And during the month of November with Mars and Sagittarius, everyone's kind of seeking out confirmation and validation that they're making the right decisions. They're closer to their goals. There's a lot of momentum and movement in their life. There's a huge resistance, ironically enough, to stagnancy. Now, that said, the travel-oriented nature of Sagittarius can inspire a lot of travel during the month of November. This is always, of course, very appropriate given the fact that we are approaching the holidays. It's not uncommon to, you know, think about the fact that a lot of people are planning trips back home, things like that. Now, the month of November, we are also having a Mercury retrograde. I will get to that. You have to be very mindful with your travel plans. Like, I will go over the dates of Mercury retrograde, but you definitely want to try to buy plane tickets, book hotels, you know, get your bookings and commitments in a row. Try to do it before the retrograde actually starts, okay? It's not uncommon with Mercury retrograde to have to move things around, rearrange. So in my opinion, it's always good to try to get that done prior. On November 5th, we are having the Taurus full moon. It's going to be at 13 degrees, okay? So you want to look at your chart. You want to look at your placements. That's going to let you know exactly where this Taurus full moon is occurring for you. And like if you have prominent fixed placements around that 13 degrees, you're really going to feel this, okay? The Taurus full moon, it's almost like it's responding to the Sagittarius Mars energy. Now, Sag and Taurus, they in conjunct, which means they don't really have that much in common, okay? Taurus is kind of like the antithesis of everything Sagittarius represents. Sagittarius is freedom, adventure, experience, progress, okay? New experiences, open-mindedness. Taurus energy, creature of habit. They love their comforts. They have a lot more to do with like traditional structures, traditional institutions, right? Prefers familiarity and security. Now, that said, this Taurus full moon, it can be a very difficult full moon because a lot of people can feel stuck or trapped. You can very much lose sight of your progress because, look, I love Taurus energy and it is deeply creative and there is a romantic energy. It's very sensual. It's very much about the pleasures of life. But with a full moon energy, there's a shadowy nature, right? There's a dimly lit nature, and the Taurus full moon can kind of have people forgetting how much progress they have made. So on November 5th, don't be surprised if you are feeling bleh, because again, there's kind of this like loss of gratitude. There's this loss of appreciation. It's super important on November 5th that you don't lose sight of the progress you've made. I know a lot of us can feel very stagnant, and it wouldn't shock me. Now, look, I live in America, okay? So I'm more referring to American politics when I say this, but on November 5th or around that date, we might have some type of confirmation from like our government that's like, yeah, we're in a recession. We essentially are. We all know it, but they don't want to admit it. They don't want to say it. But we might get like some type of confirmation about the financial status of America and, you know, this country. So financially, this can be a very, very stressful time period for a lot of people. We're already seeing that. But again, this full moon can push for transparency, push for more actual like confirmation that, okay, this is actually what's going on. Now, the Taurus full moon can also make us think about some of the commitments we've made in life. Especially when that new moon in Scorpio comes, which I will be talking about that too, we can start to think a little more deeply about the commitments we've made, what we've agreed to. Taurus is very much about long-term sustainability, long-term commitments, okay? In a lot of cases, there's a permanence to Taurus, which does oppose Scorpio, which is very much about like transformation, okay? Taurus is a little more permanent. So we can start to kind of think more deeply about the commitments we've made, some of our life choices. Essentially, how did we get to where we are now? What role have we played in the fact that we might be feeling stagnant? We might be feeling stuck. Okay, but who put you there? Do you get what I'm kind of saying? There's a little bit of a need to take accountability, okay? On November 6th, Venus enters Scorpio. Oh my gosh. Scorpio Venus, it is kind of almost similar to Mars and Sag in the sense that there's also an insatiable nature. There's more lust, there's more sensuality, there's more mine, okay? Scorpio energy, it can also be, let's be real, kind of vindictive. Venus is all about justice, balance, harmony. So during the month of November, some people might be a little more on edge because they want what they want, okay? And they're going to get it no matter what it takes. So people can be taking a lot of risks during the month of November. People might be acting in ways that are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you had that in you. You know what I mean? Like you might see some claws come out, okay? Now, for some people, this Venus in Scorpio, it can just inspire a deeper need for intimacy. There's a deeper need for good bedroom adventures and activities, okay? Especially depending on where the Scorpio Venus is transiting for you in your housing system or what it's an aspect to. That said, there can be like a lot of new beginnings during this time for some of us, okay? For some of us. By new beginnings, I'm mostly kind of referring to the potential for new romantic and intimate relationships, okay? So let's say you meet someone that you really like. This could note being intimate very quickly. You know, there's kind of this impatient, impulsive nature. Now, don't get me wrong. For some people, the Venus in Scorpio can inspire more patience, more calculation, a more methodical approach to relationships. But with the Mars and Sag, I hate to say it, people might be accessing the more impatient nature of that Scorpio Venus. So please keep in mind, the claws can come out. People can be a little more impatient. People can be more impulsive, and people can be more selfish, okay? They want what they want and they want it now. Now, with Venus in Scorpio, I will say sometimes there can be some type of financial return during this time, like a tax return, for example. This is also a really good transit for gift giving, okay? Scorpio rules over other people's things. Venus is all about material goods. So I will say this can inspire more gift giving, but it can definitely inspire in some cases like transactional gift giving and transactional relationships. I scratch your back, you scratch my back. November 7th, this is the most powerful day of the month, in my opinion. Uranus finally moves back into Taurus. Now, this is where I messed up. So for my October video, I gave the wrong date. I just read it wrong. It's totally my fault. So I do want to sincerely apologize. November 7th is the official date that Uranus moves back into Taurus. I have double, triple, quadruple checked my sources. Okay. I'm not going to mislead you again. That is completely my fault. And I'm so sorry. But yes, November 7th is the day that Uranus moves back into Taurus. This is the last time Uranus is going to be in Taurus in our lifetime. Okay, this is a huge, huge deal. Uranus first entered Taurus in 2018. So we're wrapping up a 7-year-long cycle. Okay, this is a really big deal. Now, Uranus in Taurus, this retrograde period, kind of coinciding with some of the information I said about the Taurus full moon. It would not shock me if we have some type of like public declaration from the government about, again, I live in America. Okay. So that's the politics I feel most comfortable speaking on, but it wouldn't shock me if our government finally comes out and is like, yeah, we're in a recession. There can definitely be I hate to say it, a financial collapse. Okay. I mean, look, this is also coinciding with the government shutdown. By that point, maybe it will be over. At the time that I'm filming this, it's like late October. So hopefully by then it'll be over. But look, I don't even know. Okay. I'm going to be totally honest. I don't know. So there can definitely be a financial collapse. There can be some type of like issue financially where people aren't getting paid. Like certain acts of, certain government assistance programs come to a halt, or they're not working as they should essentially. Maybe there's a delay in payment. That retrograde component of Uranus can really throw things for a loop. I mean, Uranus naturally has a lot to do with shock and surprise. So the retrograde can just be like a whole difficult, you're adding like more fuel to the fire, essentially. Okay. Taurus has a lot to do with traditional structures. Uranus retrograde in Taurus, it can lead to some type of like government collapse. Okay. It can throw us all for a loop. It can even make us kind of transition into an improvisational, like almost like a state of limbo, essentially. So we can witness a collapse of a very much like traditional institution. Okay. And I think that really does align with the threat right now that we're experiencing in America, where democracy is like on the line. Okay. It's very intense over here. I don't know where y'all live, but this is where I live, and it's very intense and unsettling. So we can definitely see some type of like crescendo of this energy while Uranus is moving back in Taurus. On November 9th, Mercury begins its retrograde period in the sign of Sagittarius at 6 degrees. Oy vey. So this is happening 2 days after Uranus begins its, finally goes back into Taurus. Keep in mind, Uranus has been retrograde, but November 7th is still a very big day. And then yes, 2 days later, we have the Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius begin. So Sagittarius, as I stated earlier in the video regarding Mars, it's all about travel. It's all about exploration. This Mercury retrograde will 100% affect travel. Okay. It just will. It wouldn't shock me if there are some type of travel related incidences that gain a lot of public attention. There might be some type of like, I don't know, like some type of airport shutdown. Is that even a thing that happens? But there can definitely be like a stalling when it comes to people's travel plans. It might also be that there's insane weather delays, like maybe a huge snowstorm or some blizzard. I live in the South, so I don't really know how snow works either. I'm just going off of astrological interpretations, but yes, to make a very long story short, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius can definitely affect travel plans. I will say, if you are booking a trip, which you probably are because it's the holidays, I would try to make my plane ticket purchase or get my ducks in a row like before November 9th. Okay. Obviously, we're still going to be in that pre-shadow, but I do think it's at least wise to try to plan this stuff in advance. Now, I will say, look, if you have to buy your ticket or you have to schedule things during the retrograde, it's fine. It is what it is. I believe everything's meant to be, and it doesn't mean disaster is going to strike. But don't be shocked if there are a change of plans, unexpectedly, or you suddenly have to like change the date of your trips or, things like that. I will say too, if you're traveling, please, please, please be very mindful about making sure your luggage, I always talk about this, is very unique to you. Okay. Like I would make sure that you invest in a suitcase or in some type of luggage bag that has like an indistinguishable print or pattern that is, you don't want anyone mistaking your bag for their bag. Okay. So make sure your name's on it. Like you just want to double check that everything that's yours is yours, especially because Mercury will be retrograding back into Scorpio on November 18th. Okay. When it's in Scorpio, especially, as I stated earlier, Scorpio rules over other people's belongings. So when Mercury retrogrades back into Scorpio on November 18th, you have to be so careful about your belongings while traveling. Like, make sure if you are out and about in an area you're not familiar with, you have maybe like a crossbody bag that goes around you and it zips, and like, you know what I mean? Like, you just want to keep your belongings safe, okay? I'm not trying to fearmonger. I feel like this is also just common sense advice, but I really want to emphasize it, okay? Now, with Mercury retrograde, moving from Sag to Scorpio, this can definitely place emphasis on our intimate relationships. Don't be surprised if a lover comes back from the past, okay? Don't be surprised if even like an old friend comes back from the past. Also, if you lended someone money, don't be surprised if come this month of November, during this retrograde period of Mercury, maybe you finally get the money back. You know what I mean? Maybe they pay you back. So there can also be some type of financial retribution at times with Mercury retrograde, especially in the sign of Scorpio. Of course, this is going to depend on where this Mercury retrograde transit is happening for you in your housing system and what it's going to be an aspect to. But yes, there can be some type of financial return, like maybe there's a tax return or something you've been waiting on. And this coincides again with Uranus moving back into Taurus, okay? Finances can be a little bit weird. Sometimes there can be a delay, but there does eventually, there will be some type of like retribution eventually, okay? Now, on November 11th, we have another planet beginning its retrograde period, and that is Jupiter. Jupiter in Cancer. This retrograde thematically very much aligns with the Mercury retrograde in Sag to Scorpio, because Jupiter in Cancer is Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, which is great. Okay, Cancer brings out some of the best qualities of Jupiter. However, Cancer has a lot to do with family, the home, so it only makes sense to travel during this time to visit your family for the holidays. But that retrograde component of Jupiter can throw everything for a loop, okay? Again, travel delays, having to rearrange your travels at the last minute. Maybe certain family members don't show up when they said they would. Like, there can be some family drama that gets in the way. So these holidays are going to be particularly really intense, okay? There's just the family stuff specifically can be very intense. Now, that said, with this Jupiter retrograde, I will say you can kind of anticipate some shocking family revelations. Like, maybe you show up to Thanksgiving dinner and your, sister announces that she's pregnant. I don't know, just an example, right? But it could be like a complete surprise. Like, maybe the situation is that you didn't even think that was a possibility, or maybe like, you get what I'm trying to say. Like, there can be some shocking family gossip that goes around that everyone's like, oh my gosh. There can also be a shocking breakup in the family that you didn't see coming. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen to you, so I don't want you to worry. It is really going to depend on where this Jupiter retrograde is transiting for you. But to make a long story short, there can definitely be some family drama. Now, on the flip side, there can also be some type of like family reunion that takes place. The retrograde energy can bring people back together because it usually does bring a little bit of drama, but that drama kind of gives you an excuse to come together and resolve things, okay? So I will say this Jupiter retrograde can definitely inspire some like deep-seated emotional healing when it comes to your family life and your family relationships. Now, one of the most important things to note about this Cancer Jupiter retrograde is that it can have a big impact on like domestic affairs. So we might see some type of travel ban, like we might see some type of drama relating to geographical locations. I do live in America, so, I guess I'm mostly kind of referring to American politics when I say this, but this is, again, not really a surprise because we're already seeing a lot of this take place in America. Very like anti-immigration, what's going on in our country, very sad and scary. And I do think that it can intensify or reach a boiling point during this retrograde period. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, something's probably going to give at some point. But yes, there can be a lot more intensity revolving around that topic of, and let me kind of give some clarity as to why. So Jupiter has a lot to do again with travel, global affairs. Cancer is very much like home base. It's family, it's familiarity. So it's not really shocking that, this Jupiter and Cancer transit we are seeing. And I will say too, this is kind of global. Like this is like worldwide, this like anti-immigration feeling that a lot of world leaders are like using to demonize other people. Like it's not okay. But again, it's not shocking that this is currently on the rise, at least astrologically. So this Jupiter retrograde period in Cancer, we can definitely see, this intensifying, but also potentially reaching a boiling point where, things just kind of combust. November 20th, we have the Scorpio New Moon. Scorpio New Moon is kind of delicious. It's a very intimate new moon phase. So people might be craving more intimacy during this time. This can also heighten bedroom activity. It can heighten fertility, especially depending on where this is transiting for you. I will go over this when I do horoscopes. So you need to be really cautious if you're going to be engaging in intimacy on November 20th, because there can be some surprises that ensue following it. Scorpio New Moon can breathe new life into old spaces as well. So if there's anything in your life that's like dusty or old, or you feel like it no longer serves a purpose, you might come to some type of revelation or conclusion where you're like, okay, you know what? How can I like refurbish this? How can I renovate this? How can I use my genius and my creativity and my innovation to transform this essentially. So new life can be revealed in old dusty corners essentially. Now with this Scorpio New Moon, I know new moon is like new beginnings, but I will say, because again, Scorpio thematically is all about transformations and life cycle. And, we are still going to be in the Mercury retrograde during this time, and it will be in Scorpio by that point. This could note old people coming back from the past, especially old, like intimate relationships, like exes, for example. If you've been struggling with your spouse or your romantic partner, this brings forth a really powerful time for clarity, for closure, for connection. Now, look, for some people, this Scorpio New Moon can definitely kind of trigger, a revelation where you're like, okay, there's really nowhere else for this relationship to go. There's no more momentum. There's no more progress being made. And of course, that can be a very difficult thing to realize, but it can also set you free. Okay. So this Scorpio New Moon, full of revelations, full of spiritual insight. It can enhance psychic prowess. Okay. So you might be feeling, at least on a spiritual level, a lot more connected to your spiritual core. And that can definitely help you tap into your more intuitive powers. Depending on where this new moon is transiting for you, of course, everyone has their own unique spiritual gifts and skills. So that's totally going to vary. Now, I will say too, because the Scorpio New Moon, it can definitely kind of take away the veil to the other side. So you might also be feeling a little more in tune with your ancestors, the people who have come before you. It can make you more aware of like karmic cycles and patterns and fill you with this desire to break them and end them. November 21st, Sun enters Sagittarius. I love Sag Sun. I don't know if it's my Capricorn Sun, but around this time is when I really start to like get into the spirit of winter. It's something about it just enlivens me. It invigorates me. So I hope that everyone else also feels that. So when Sun enters in Sag, there can kind of be like a weight lifted, especially after that really heavy Taurus full moon, Scorpio new moon cycle. Like there's a much needed sense of relief that comes when the Sun enters Sagittarius. Okay. Now with this period, again, travel remains a theme. So this is definitely like a continuation of that. More travels, more adventure. Mars will still be in Sagittarius during this time as well. So again, there's kind of just a continuation of that like need for excitement, that need for more. I will say Sun in Sag can definitely inspire people to be more open-minded, be more receptive to abundance, fortune, good luck. Now, I will say too, Sag Sun being kind of like the gambler of the zodiac, there can be a continuation of like taking risks, doing things that maybe you've never done before, okay? Trying new things. Sag Sun period is a great time to try new things. I think that's important to mention too. Like, even if you're trying a new cuisine, okay, there's a fulfillment that comes from that. There's this sense of inspiration that comes from knowing like, there's so much in life that we have all yet to do. And yeah, we're not gonna all get to do it all. But even on like a day-to-day basis, there's little things that you can do that are brand new, like taking a different route to go to work, trying a new restaurant down the street that you haven't tried yet. Like, these are the little things that you need to be focusing on. And these can build momentum. This builds momentum for like bigger, newer things in your life. I'm very serious when I say this. It's kind of like a form of manifestation in a way. It's like when you give yourself these little new things to try, you're communicating to the universe, like, I'm ready for bigger new things in my life. You want to remain receptive and open-minded when Sun is in Sagittarius. November 27th, Saturn stations direct in the sign of Pisces at 25 degrees. Hallelujah. Seriously, hallelujah. Like, I really think come this day, everyone will be feeling so much better, especially now that Sun is in Sag. Like, I really do believe that there's going to be a huge weight lifted. Now, look, I'm not saying everything's going to be easy, breezy, beautiful, like right away, but I do think Saturn stationing direct is a much needed thing. I feel like this has been a very hard past few months for a lot of people. There's been a lot of pressure. There's been a lot of emotional overflow. So hopefully when Saturn stations direct, everyone's feeling a little bit better. Look, it will still be in Pisces, but the good news is now that it is direct, I think this is the time when a lot of clarity and closure can come flooding in, for sure. And I feel like everyone will have kind of like this strengthened sense of spirituality, faith, like, we're all spiritually stronger, I think, come the end of November. Like, we're all more equipped, I think, as well to face reality because we are so much more tapped into our spiritual core. I think, Saturn retrograde probably helped a lot of people confront certain coping mechanisms that they have, fears that they have, hidden desires. So when it stations direct, now we have the time to actually put everything we learned into practice. On November 29th, Mercury finally stations direct right before December. Hallelujah again. I think this is also going to be just like a great like relief. You know what I mean? Like, you've been carrying a really heavy backpack and you've had to be really on edge, and now you get to kind of relax a little bit. Of course, there will be a post-shadow Mercury retrograde, so things can still be a little wonky, but at least we know come November 29th, like, it's over, we're good to go, more movement and momentum and progress being made in life. Now, the day after, on November 30th, Venus enters Sagittarius. Woo! I love this too. Like, I don't even have any Sag energy in my chart, so I promise I'm not biased. I just genuinely think Sag season is so healing and so freeing. And it's just like, I feel like we all feel that sense of luck, like that collective, lucky, abundant energy. I also think around the holidays, people are very nutty, which makes sense because they're dealing with their family. They're having to confront certain components of their childhood. And, that nutty nature, I think, is also kind of reflected in that Sag energy. So anyway, Venus moving into Sag, it's a very generous time period. People are much more likely to forgive others, to have compassion. There's a lot of reflection over, the year that we just endured. So people are feeling more philosophical, more insightful. And I think what's really great about Venus in Sag is it helps you connect with people that maybe you have nothing in common with them. Like, it really does allow for this act of forgiveness, this desire to understand one another. And you can actually form connections with people that you never thought you would in a million years. It's kind of like this feeling that we're not all as different as we like to think. We tend to have similar goals. We tend to have similar fears. We express them differently. They come from, different triggers and different things, but there's a lot of harmony in who we are as humans, like as a human species. You know what I mean? So yeah, I like Venus and Sag for that reason. It can also just inspire more desire for knowledge, education, again, learning more about one another, finding some point of connection, even in a world where, especially in America, it's a very individualistic society. They don't want us to band together. They don't want us to be friends. They want everyone to just like, you know, enter the rat race and just engage in the capitalist hellscape and compete with one another. It's a very individualistic society. It's a society where people say, oh, I don't need anybody. You know what I mean? Like they want us to be that way. And I think Venus in Sag is very much pushing us in the opposite direction, you know, yearning for more togetherness. Okay, now we're going to get into horoscopes. So as I go through the 12 signs, you can definitely apply this to your rising or sun. So let's say you're a Gemini rising with an Aries sun, you can watch the Gemini horoscope and the Aries horoscope. Okay, that will, you know, give you insight into what you can expect. All right, let's start with Aries. So there's going to be a lot of activity in the second house and the eighth house here. This is going to definitely be the month of November, a time where you might be revisiting some financial matters, okay? You might have some financial ducks to get in a row. This is a really good time to actually like think more deeply about your financial standing in life. You might have an opportunity to clear away some debts. You might have an opportunity to like, you know, you just might have, November might give you more opportunity and advantage to, you know, kind of square away any weird financial baggage you might be experiencing or dealing with. I will say too, this is a great time to save. This is a great time to like put money away for a later date. There's just more financial mindfulness, essentially. Now, the month of November can also introduce new intimate activities. So if you are single, you might meet someone that you are very attracted to and you just can't resist. You can't keep your hands off them. So there can be the start of a new intimate, physically intimate relationship for the Aries babies out there. Not to mention, the month of November can definitely have you reflecting on your sense of self-worth, your personal sense of value, especially when it comes to the decisions that you make. So are you making decisions from a place of insecurity or doubt? Are you settling for certain relationships that are not very good for you just because your self-esteem is kind of like bleh? Okay, so there's kind of this need to confront some of the choices you've been making, the intention behind your choices, and the state of mind that you were in at the time of making those choices. Now, for Taurus energy, there's going to be a lot of activity in your first house and your seventh house, okay? So you can anticipate some people from the past coming back, especially like lovers, exes. You might just kind of have people that show up, but in a new way. So that Scorpio New Moon can definitely inspire, again, like this shift or this transformation where old people might have a new purpose for you. You know, old people might come forward and present themselves in a new way, giving you a lot to think about. So if you or an ex, or even like a friend or a business partner, if you underwent a split or some type of breakup, essentially, where it's like, you go work on you, I'm gonna work on me, this month might actually have you two coming back together, okay? So that can definitely happen during this month. Now, that Taurus full moon is definitely gonna allow for more connection to self. You might be kind of combing through any issues you might be having relating to your self-esteem, okay? Your personal sense of self-worth, your value, also your sense of security in the world. What makes you feel secure? What is going on in your life right now that's making you feel insecure? What can you do about those things? There's a problem-solving nature to this Taurus full moon that you can definitely feel, and it can inspire you to like actually start to clear away some clutter in your life. Now, if you are already in a relationship, this time frame can definitely inspire you and your partner to get closer together. There can be a lot more intimacy. If you're single, it's not just people from the past that can come back, but there can be some new familiar faces. So there can definitely be like a new romantic, face that has a lot of promise. For my Geminis, there's a lot of activity in your 6th house and your 12th house this month, okay? So this is very much like a month where you're kind of diving into the depths of your psyche. You are having to analyze and reflect on all the ways in life that you might be feeling stuck or trapped and how you got there and what role you played. So this Taurus full moon in the 12th, like it is going to kind of force you to take accountability. You might be feeling very stagnant, very stuck. You might be dealing with a looming, long-standing issue and you don't know how to get out of it just yet. Like you might even feel like you're in too deep. You might feel like your hands are tied or like you just don't, again, there's kind of this like inability to actually like really see the choices you have, the authority that you have. Your authority can become lost and kind of disoriented. So there is a need in November to reclaim your authority, give yourself some power, give yourself the freedom to make the best decision for you. Try not to worry too much. Like the logistics can get in the way, essentially. Like you might feel stuck because of certain logistics. So this is one of those things where it will eventually, I think, kind of resolve itself, but you still have to like make decisions in the meantime, essentially. You can't be a sitting duck, if that makes sense. Now, your sixth house is also activated. You need to tend to your health and you need to tend to your work life. I will say your work life might be more active this month, but in terms of health, you might be dealing with excess stress because of the situation you might have found yourself in. So you need to tend to your health this month. Make sure you're getting good rest. Like, you know what I mean? Also tending to your spiritual health, having more faith, that can help you problem solve. For my Cancers out there, there's going to be a lot of activity in your 5th house and your 11th house. Your fertility is heightened this month with that Scorpio New Moon in your 5th. Okay. You need to be very, very, very cautious. One intimate encounter is all it takes. Okay. So your fertility is heightened. Now, I will say too, this can also impact some of the people around you or your family relationships. There can be a baby announcement, a pregnancy announcement. There can be a proposal. That's another thing that can happen. Your romantic life can undergo like a huge shift as a result of something new and exciting. Okay. Your intimate personal affairs can become a little more delicious. There's more to talk about. There's more to experience. Okay. The Scorpio New Moon can also bring about new creative prowess. So you might be bustling with new project ideas, things like that. Now, your 11th house is also going to be activated by this Taurus full moon. So this can definitely note a desire to maybe reassess some friendships, okay? Maybe you feel like you're at a loss with a friend of yours or a coworker that's another sector, that's another community member that you can be like impacted by, if that makes sense. Now, your 11th house is also going to be activated by this Taurus full moon. You might have kind of an issue with a friend you need to sort through, okay? You might be kind of stewing in this state of nostalgia that is making it hard to see somebody clearly for who they are. There can also potentially be some type of like stagnancy when it comes to your relationship with a coworker, a professional affiliate. There's definitely a need for more movement, for more decisiveness, maybe getting like an ultimatum or something in one of your platonic relationships. That's a way this can manifest. You also might kind of feel like your time with maybe a certain company or a corporation or maybe in the workplace, like your time has kind of like it's run its course. It no longer has much value to you anymore. So there can be this desire to kind of move on from an old professional relationship or an old friendship or like a community engagement of sorts. Like maybe you were volunteering with a certain organization and this Taurus full moon comes around and you're like, okay, I'm not vibing with this anymore. For my Leos out there, there's a lot of activity this month in your 4th house and your 10th house. There's a need to balance work and family, essentially. Your personal life and your professional life might be at odds. Now, that said, your personal life can become very demanding with that Scorpio New Moon taking place in the 4th house. So you might have some family stuff that you have to tend to. There can be new beginnings in the home. So this isn't necessarily like a dramatic thing per se. I mean, I guess it kind of could be depending on what this new moon is also an aspect to, but for the most part, this definitely just notes some need to like embrace a new beginning. Again, there's like a transmutation of blah energy into something favorable. So there can be some type of act of like forgiveness, some resolve, more closeness, more bonding, more emotional healing in your family relationships. There might be some tension in the workplace. It's possible you feel you're not getting enough credit. It's possible that you are waiting on some type of payment. Things can kind of be like stagnant. And there's this like stubbornness that can be found in the workplace that is making it a little hard to feel motivated to do your job. And it might also be too that your family life becomes so consuming that you're losing focus in work. Now, if any of my Leo influence babies out there are trying to like sell their house or they're moving, I will say this like new moon, full moon cycle can very much reflect that. So some of you might be relocating during this time, trying to sell your house. I will say, I think that the energy is kind of weird with real estate right now, just like logically speaking. But there can definitely be, triumph following a struggle. Like if you've been trying to sell your house for a while now, you might experience some type of triumph. Now for Virgo, there's going to be a lot of activity in your 9th house and your 3rd house this month. This is very much kind of what I was saying earlier with that Sag energy, like more. Okay. So with the full moon occurring in the 9th house of travel expansion, there is a need for more. You might feel like you've been living the same day over and over, and you're like, okay, when is it my turn? Or when am I getting more, right? Like you're outgrowing a lot of the current circumstances in your life, essentially. And that's palpable and that's very felt by you. So even though there can kind of be this difficult confrontation of it's like, okay, I don't want to live this way anymore, or I'm kind of sick of this. Like something's got to give. I need something new. At the very least, that, following the Taurus full moon, the Scorpio new moon taking place in your 3rd house can inspire change in your lifestyle, in your routine, like your daily habits, your daily activities. Like this is a really good time to form new behaviors, essentially, form new lifestyle habits, getting rid of anything that you might experience in your day-to-day that's no longer working for you, okay? And this can show new affiliations, like maybe you take on a new role in your community, or maybe you just like are making new friends that have very like-minded values and views and beliefs and perspectives. So that's another thing too, is like there's this desire to like seeking out a new community is something that can happen this month. Now I will say, because of the Taurus full moon in your 9th, you might be planning a trip this month. You might not take it this month, but you might just be planning it, and whatever the case might be. So for you people, you do need to start like getting your bookings together. Like this is a good time to just get it done before that Mercury retrograde. For my Libras, this is a really intense month. There's going to be a lot of activity in your 2nd house and your 8th house. Okay. So the Taurus full moon is going to take place in your 8th house. This is very much centered on commitments and finances. Okay. So this is like similar to my Aries rising babies out there, getting your finances in a row. I will say that Taurus full moon in the 8th house can definitely bring about some type of like financial closure, financial return. You might be having to think more about how to, diversify your finances, okay? With the Scorpio moon taking place in the 2nd house, that can definitely allow for a financial return. So receiving something that is owed to you. This is a really good time for investing. This is a great time for like selling a house, for example. But that Scorpio new moon in the 2nd, it does bring into the picture money that you did not actively work for. So it's not money necessarily that you're like clocking in for. So sometimes this can note receiving an inheritance, receiving money, maybe a lot of money as like a gift from a family member or a friend, you know what I mean? Something along those lines. Now, sometimes there can be some legal dealings with 8th and 2nd house energy activated. This might give you, opportunity to sign a contract. Maybe you have a new job offer. Now, keep in mind, we do have the Mercury retrograde. So if you do sign anything, you just want to make sure you're looking over it once or twice, or you have a lawyer look it over or something along those lines. But yes, you can be faced with a brand new commitment that you actually have to like set in stone with your signature. Now, for my Scorpios out there, there's going to be a lot of activity in your 7th house and your 1st house. So with your 7th house, this definitely allows for some type of closure in your relationships in life. If there has been a long-standing issue, remember Taurus moon is like kind of stagnant. It's very fixed. It's congested. So if there's a long-standing issue in your relationship, this is a good time to, it might reach a boiling point. There can be a lot of emotions that come out that have been hiding for a long time. You might even have like your partner comes to you and says something that you had long forgotten about. Like there can be something brought up that happened years and years and years ago, depending on the length of your relationship. Now, for those of you who are single, this is a really good time to kind of assess what you want from a relationship, especially in relation to like what your personal sense of value is, how you perceive your worth. So this is a good time to kind of, reflect on some of your relationship dynamics, the role that you've played in accepting some of the dynamics you've engaged in that were very unfavorable, things like that. Now, the new moon, of course, is going to be in your 1st house. I love this for you guys. This is like all new revelations relating to yourself, your identity, your character, your personality. Like you can undergo a lot of like life-altering realizations that kind of help you step outside of yourself, help you see yourself from a whole new perspective, which will in turn really impact your relationships in life in a favorable sense. This is a good time to tend to your health as well. So, finding ways to strengthen your body, increase your physical confidence, your physical prowess. There can be more hot and heavy intimate encounters this month. But for some of you, especially with that Taurus full moon taking place, you might be considering celibacy. I know that's like kind of extreme, and maybe some of you might find that a little funny, but there can definitely be like more boundaries put in place when it comes to your dating life and your intimate life, where you're like, you know what, I don't even want to do that anymore. I'm like reserving this energy. You know what I mean? Something along those lines can happen where you start to think a little more deeply about your sexuality. And that can manifest in a whole lot of ways. It's not always about having or not being, not being or not being intimate. Sometimes it's also just more reflection on your preferences, your orientation, things like that. For my Sag angels out there, which by the way, I know we're going to be in Scorpio season for most of November. So happy birthday to the Scorpios out there, but also your birthday's coming up. So happy, very premature birthday to the Sagittarians out there. Now there's going to be a lot of activity in your 6th house and your 12th house. Okay. These are very intense houses. There's a lot of spiritual insight to gain. There's like new philosophies that you can think about and consider, especially with the Scorpio new moon in your 12th. You might be needing more rest. You might be needing to like reserve more of your energy. There's more like sacredness to your spirituality and also your sensuality, your sexuality. So this is very much a time to like regroup and collect and come back to self, come home to self. You might have new boundaries, kind of similar to the Scorpio risings when it comes to this new moon, full moon cycle, where you might have new boundaries that you implement when it comes to some of your intimate relationships. Okay. This can coincide with brand new spiritual beliefs. There is definitely this craving to get closer to your inner sacred power. Okay. Your intuition can heighten during this time and strengthen. You might be having more psychic dreams. Like your spirituality is just on 10 during the month of November. Now, with the full moon occurring in your 6th house, this is very much a kind of a period where you need to address certain lifestyle habits, maybe a certain routine that you've clung to. Maybe you have to start thinking more about your coping mechanisms in the world. So the month of November can force you to get really serious with yourself, very honest with yourself, trying to kind of move past and work through any stubborn defense mechanisms you might have, anything that's keeping you feeling stagnant on a day-to-day basis. My Capricorns, there's going to be a lot of activity in your 5th house and your 11th house. This is very exciting and for a lot of different reasons. So with the Taurus full moon taking place in your 5th, there can definitely be a need to like break through creative blocks. So if you've been feeling stagnant in your energy, but specifically like your creative energy, like if you've been having brain fog, or if you've been feeling stuck when it comes to like how you can move through life and make the most of your talents and your skills, this is a much needed full moon period that can really help you push past anything that's getting in the way of you expressing your talents, really fulfilling your potential, things like that. I will say the Taurus full moon in the 5th can also kind of bring up some relationship things that you need to comb through. So you might be in a period of like stagnancy with your romantic partner if you're in a relationship. If you're single, this time can help you get a better understanding of like what you really need and what you really want from your, romantic life, essentially. But yes, there can definitely be more care and concern in how you can improve upon your talents and your skills. Okay. Now, the new moon is going to be in your 11th house. This is all about forming new community connections, okay? You might have some type of like, your sense of purpose can become heightened. You know more now about what you want to do and how you want to serve your community. You can make new friends. You can make new colleagues. You can really immerse yourself in a new organization, a new company. There's more momentum and movement when it comes to your professional life with that Scorpio new moon in the 11th, okay? Like essentially your personal expression And your personal talents, you might need to hone in on those a little bit more. And sometimes that's just a matter of having confidence. Like sometimes it's more so a matter of just nurturing your self-esteem. But this can definitely bring forth benefits, abundance, and advancement to your professional life and your community connections. Aquarius babies out there. So you are going to have a lot of activity this month in your 4th house and your 10th house. Look, this Taurus full moon is going to be in your 4th. I'm not going to lie, this is pretty challenging. There's a lot of stagnancy felt emotionally. Okay. So you might be feeling very emotionally congested. You're due for an emotional release. So, come this full moon, this full moon, November 5th, you might be due for like a good cry or an outburst or something, you got to get it out somehow. So this is a time where on an emotional level, you are definitely going to experience a release of sorts. All that emotional tension, it has to find a way out essentially. And there can definitely be some family related issues you have to sort through during November. Now that's not to say it's all bad in the home. Sometimes it's just a matter of, addressing the stuffiness so that you can, feel lighter and have, new beginnings in your home life essentially. Now the Scorpio New Moon is going to take place in your 10th house. This is great for professional opportunities. Okay. This is new professional advancements. If you've been on the prowl for a job, November can bring you positive confirmation, affirmation, validation, praise. Like your professional life can really undergo some type of uptick and advancement. This can allow for newfound strength, newfound confidence, more valuing of self. Like the people around you might more so begin to validate your own sense of value, your own sense of worth. Okay. So November can be for family, kind of a difficult time, but for work, your sense of purpose, your professional advancements, it can be very positive. My Pisces babies out there, I think November is actually going to be a pretty good month for you. So you're going to have a lot of 3rd house and 9th house activity going. The Scorpio New Moon will be in your 9th house. You're definitely probably going to travel this month. I will say again, we do have that Mercury retrograde. So you just want to be mindful that you're, all your ducks are in a row, whatever. But traveling is definitely on the itinerary, pun intended, for, the month of November, planning trips, going on trips. There's more confidence, I think, in just you as you are essentially. Like there's more confidence in your ability to be competent and capable in the world. You might even be more comfortable on your own. So it's entering hermit mode, but not in a depressing way, essentially. You might genuinely be planning a solo trip. Even if you have loved ones and people in your life, there's kind of this desire to be on your own, go explore, and also an increase in intuition, spiritual prowess. You might take up a new spiritual study, especially, the 9th house being the house of education, expansion. There's just so much more to discover about yourself, your wants, your needs. So I actually love this month. Now, look, the Taurus full moon is going to be in your 3rd house, which is very much kind of a desire to move on from certain relationships that aren't serving you, certain organizations, community affiliations. So you might be feeling all right, it's time for something new. I'm ready. You're ready to move on. You're closing a chapter. You're closing a very significant, hefty chapter. Okay. So there's this desire to rid yourself of burdens, rid yourself of heavy baggage. You recognize that you've done a lot of growth. And now it's time to go explore that growth, put it into action, and leave behind anything that's just not suiting you. Okay, there you have it. Horoscopes for the month of November, along with all the dates I mentioned earlier. I hope this made sense. Let me know in the comments if you are looking forward to November. There's a lot of big stuff coming up. Do not forget, I have my website linked in my bio for those of you who would like to book a reading with me. I also have my email list, so don't forget to sign up for that. And I officially hit 1,000 followers. I am super stoked. Thank you so much for everyone who has been supporting me. I am going to be more mindful and intentional moving forward to begin posting more YouTube content. I will still be doing, of course, my monthly scopes and updates, but I do want to post other content relating to birth charts and things like that. So thank you so much for your support and your patience. I promise I will start to fill out my page more. I hope everyone has an amazing November and a safe, lovely holiday season.